Hello, and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, Wednesday has been a busy news day, that is for sure. Boy, do we have a lot to go over today. But before we get started, let me know how you're doing. I hope you're all doing so well on this Wednesday afternoon. Today is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, 6/25/25. Kind of interesting how that worked out today. And, overall, I've just got to say how impressed I am with how successful the Trump administration has been so far. And it shows in the way that Democrats are reacting to it. So today we have a story about yet another impeachment attempt by Al Green. We have a huge lash out of the New York City electorate, putting in a Muslim into the mayoral spot, or presumed to be mayor of New York. But first, we have to talk about this NATO summit that happened. So Trump was just in, I believe they were over in Germany or Sweden, or one of the European countries for this NATO summit that just happened, and they were talking about defense spending. So let's get right into our first story. This comes from the Straits Times. So NATO commits to higher spending sought by Trump and mutual defense. This is great. This is what I've been calling for a very long time. We need more of this. NATO leaders on June 25th backed the big increase in defense spending that U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded and restated their commitment to defend one another from attack. While Mr. Trump got what he wanted at the brief summit tailor-made for him, his NATO allies will be relieved that he committed to the fundamental principles of collective defense after less clear-cut language on June 24th. In a 5-point statement, NATO endorsed a higher defense spending goal of 5% of gross domestic product by 2035, a response not only to President Trump, but also to Europeans' fears that Russia poses a growing threat to their security following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. That's for sure. Russia definitely does have a lot of ability to attack NATO countries. The 32 allies' brief communique added, quote, we reaffirm our ironclad commitment to collective defense as enshrined in Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, that an attack on one is an attack on all. President Trump had long demanded in no uncertain terms that other countries step up their spending on defense to reduce NATO's heavy reliance on the U.S. So that's all I wanted to get through in that article. This is great. I've said for a very long time that we need to have more spending by NATO to support defense. The entire world has basically taken the perspective of, if anything bad happens, then the United States will just clean it all up. And, I don't necessarily have an issue with the United States being the beacon of hope or having the strongest military in the world or anything like that. But when it comes to conflict, especially like over in Ukraine, I think it's insane that that more of Europe wasn't pitching in to help Ukraine out against Russia, and it was all basically on the United States. So, we can't just be the end-all be-all when it comes to stopping wars in this world, and there are many other countries out there that have very strong militaries, or at least have a lot of money, and that can be helping to finance military operations. So I love it. I'm here for it. I think it's great. So, yeah. Let's go move on to our next story. So we have another Supreme Court decision. As you know, June is a big month for the Supreme Court. Lots of decisions are coming out. So I have a video clip to show you, and we'll talk about this. So the Supreme Court allows Trump's third country deportations, a major test for presidency. The Supreme Court has been asked to preside over a flurry of lower court challenges centered on Trump's immigration crackdown. So what my understanding of what was going on was that Trump was wanting to deport people en masse, and that has been paused by a lot of lower courts, and the Supreme Court has heard about that today, sided with him and said, hey, you don't have to have individual rulings for each and every single person who's here illegally. I mean, there's millions of people who are here. It would be impossible to get through all of them at this point. So I want to play this brief clip from Fox News, and then we will read the full story. So let me go and get that pulled up for you.
A win for President Trump at the Supreme Court. For now, the feds can end so-called temporary protected status for hundreds of Venezuelans. While the legal battle goes back to a lower court, this is separate from the fight over deporting accused gang members under the Alien Enemies Act, which is on a different track. It is about a program that prevents deportations to countries dealing with natural disasters or civil unrest. With that, we bring in Jonathan Turley, constitutional attorney and Fox News contributor. Jonathan, great to have you with us to sort this out. Give us a sense of what happened at the court today and what it means.
Well, this is a considerable win for the Trump administration. We're talking about not a small number of people, talking about over 500,000 people. And what was curious is that the federal law itself says that you can use this special parole provision on a case-by-case basis. That is not what the Biden administration did. But once these people were in the country, the Trump administration sought to end that status. After all, it's called temporary. And the court said, no, now you've got to do case-by-case determinations, which, of course, would take a very long time. For the administration, this is a huge issue, because if these individuals stay past 2 years, other protections kick in. They become as difficult to deport as all the other millions that were allowed into the country that are going through the slow immigration process. So it's a considerable win.
Jonathan, thank you very much for the update.
Crackdown. Excuse me, I think I was muted for all that time. So justices on the high court ruled 6-3 to stay the lower court injunction, with Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson dissenting. Quote, rather than allowing our lower court colleagues to manage this high-stakes litigation with the care and attention it plainly requires, this court now intervenes to grant the government emergency relief from an order it has repeatedly defied, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said. My gosh, such strong words. Quote, I cannot join so gross an abuse of the court's inequitable discretion, she added. At issue was a group of migrants challenging their removals to third countries or countries that were not their country of origin. Lawyers for those migrants had urged the Supreme Court earlier this month to leave in place a ruling from U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy, who previously ordered the Trump administration to keep in U.S. custody all migrants slated for deportation at a country not explicitly named in their removal orders, known as a third country deportation. Murphy ruled that migrants must remain in the United States custody until they have the opportunity to conduct a reasonable fear interview or the chance to explain to U.S. officials any fear of prosecution or torture they should be released into the country. In appealing the case to the Supreme Court, U.S. Solicitor General D. John Sawyer argued that the Judge Murphy ruling had blocked them from removing some of the worst illegal aliens, including a case of migrants sent to South Sudan earlier this year without due process or notice. So I think this is great. Get the mass deportations going. We're ready for it. A lot of I think Trump supporters have been complaining about where have the mass deportations gone to. Well, this is where they've gone to. They're being blocked by all these courts for absolutely no reason, trying to justify the fact that we should have all illegals all throughout our country. That's where they've gone. Also, stuff takes time. It takes time to execute all of this. So the fact that they've already gotten rid of so many people, the fact that they simply just shut the border down and they stopped the bleeding, that's great to me, right? That's a total win right there. That's all the Trump administration did for illegal immigration. That's a massive win. Now, any people we can get out of here after that, even better. Let's do it. All right, move on to our next story. So Trump administration officials slam leaked bomb damage assessment indicating Iran could restart nuclear program within months. Completely preposterous. Now I read this and I was like, I'm really interested to see what they have to say about this and to hear if this report has any legitimacy. So there's a report that was released that seems to state that the U.S. bombing that we did over Iran didn't really do a whole lot. It just kind of damaged facilities. It didn't fully cripple the Iranians' nuclear facilities. And the administration has been very adamant and clear they did do exactly that. They did cripple the nuclear facilities. So let's see what this article has to say. So the Trump administration officials on Tuesday slammed a leaked preliminary intelligence assessment of the damage done to Iran's nuclear facilities by weekend U.S. airstrikes that the president has touted as a massive success. The Classified Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, bomb damage assessment deemed a low confidence assessment of the effectiveness on Saturday's strikes on the Fordow, Efesan, and Natanz sites reportedly determined that Iran could bring its nuclear program back online as quickly as 1 or 2 months, according to Fox News. On the high end, estimates indicate that Iran could restart uranium enrichment within a year, according to those who viewed the DIA report. CNN, which first reported the leaked classified document, noted that assessments are ongoing and could change, but the DIA believes Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed by the bunker buster bombs dropped on the nuclear facilities. The White House has strongly disagreed with the DIA's preliminary assessment. Quote, this alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt wrote on X. Quote, everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. Total obliteration, Leavitt argued. The assessment was reportedly based on satellite images and electronic communications that have been intercepted since the strikes. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff charged that any suggestion the U.S. did not achieve its military objectives in Iran is, quote, completely preposterous. Now, one more thing. This is what Trump said. So, Trump took to Truth Social late Tuesday to slam news outlets reporting on the intelligence assessment, arguing that they, quote, teamed up in an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed, the president maintained. Now, you can say what you want about President Trump, but when it comes to military operations, it doesn't seem like he typically lies about those. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm inclined to generally believe that what the president says, that nuclear facilities were destroyed and what the entire administration is kind of echoing, is 100% true. Now, if it ends up not being true, that'll be interesting to see too. And I think the bigger question will be, well, if this report was in fact true, that Iran still has the ability to make nuclear weapons, why were you lying about it to the American people at this time that I'm reporting on this right now? Or why did you immediately just discredit the report? Or why was the report inaccurate enough that it was discredited by you? So I think there's a lot of unknowns in that there's a lot of unknowns right now when it comes to that. So like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with all of this. And if this report is in fact true or not. I don't think it is. And I think that we have crippled Iran's nuclear policy. But if it doesn't end up being true, we'll be interested to see what the defense of this is. So, I mean, these are not small claims that are being made right now that Iran still has nukes. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's move on to a story. So Al Green is back in the news today, folks. Al Green, famed Democrat Al Green, who has an absolute hard-on for impeaching the president, has filed articles of impeachment against Trump over Iran strikes. So here's Al Green, one of the more hideous-looking congressmen right now. So Representative Al Green on Tuesday filed an article of impeachment against President Donald Trump for failing to seek authorization from Congress before he bombed nuclear sites in Iran. So I have a video to show you all of this. Let's get that pulled up here. And we'll hear all about how Al Green thinks that Donald Trump should be impeached.
Our country is nearing a moment of decision. I rise because we are at the intersection of democracy and autocracy. I rise to announce that at this moment in time, I have filed H-Res 537. H-Res 537 is a privileged resolution. H-Res 537 has been filed because I believe that the President of the United States has committed an impeachable act. H-Res 57 addresses abuse of presidential powers by disregarding the separation of powers, devolving American democracy into an authoritarian.
So Al Green thinks that the United States has devolved into an authoritarian regime, that Donald Trump must be stopped because he's this king of America who's just doing all these unprecedented actions against other countries, being the commander-in-chief of the United States. It always strikes me as so funny when Democrats and Republicans, for that matter, just entirely forget about what has been done in the past, how they reacted then, and what the Constitution says. So the Constitution says that Trump has the authority to go and bomb other countries. He can do that. I mean, he can't go and start a full-out war, technically, without getting congressional approval. But I mean, the Vietnam War was started without congressional approval. Every war since 1945 the United States has been a part of has been started without congressional approval. Even the war in the Middle East started by George Bush was started without congressional approval. And where were these congressmen who were wanting to impeach Donald Trump then, when all that was happening? So it's just preposterous that you have these representatives who are supposed to be experts on American government questioning what authorities the president has. I mean, I was initially against all the bombing that happened in Iran, but never once did I say that it was unconstitutional, that Trump should be impeached for it. It was 100% legal for him to go and do that, at least under our laws. So let's see what this article has to say. So Congress has the authority to declare war under Article 1 of the Constitution. However, presidents on both sides of the aisle have authorized strikes without formal approval by Congress. Absolutely. Like I said, every single U.S. military action that has happened since World War II has not been authorized by Congress. There has not been a formal war declared by Congress, even though we've been a part of wars. White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers defended the president's successful, quote, peace through strength strategy. President Trump was able to quickly accomplish what no other president has been able to achieve. Thanks to his peace through strength leadership, Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated and a ceasefire has been agreed to, Rogers said. Quote, eliminating the prospect of nuclear war is a nonpartisan underlying accomplishment that everyone should celebrate as a historic moment for the United States, the Middle East, and the entire world, Rogers added. Absolutely. So, seems like seems like that military action worked out in the long run. So Al Green just can't get the idea of impeaching Trump out of his head. What is this, like the 20th time this year that he's tried to impeach Trump? I think that's like all he does in Congress. He just writes an article of impeachment, introduces it, and sits on his ass until the next time it's time to impeach, right? Seems like I hear about him in the news every 4 weeks or so. So, once again, nothing's going to come of this. I don't know. We need to stop trying to impeach presidents for things that are obviously not impeachable. It just completely, it's like the boy who cried wolf. It just completely degrades what Americans think are actually impeachable offenses, right? So when we do have a president that actually comes along that actually does deserve to be impeached, and believe me, we will have a president at some point, I will almost guarantee in my lifetime, that will be impeached and convicted by the Senate and removed from office. When that time comes, people are not going to be completely on board with the idea of impeachment because of people like Al Green, because they're going to remember the days that they tried to impeach Trump. And they're like, this was not impeachable. They were just trying to go after them as a political enemy. So when the days of actual impeachment come along, I will not be surprised when people say, oh, they're just trying to act political and get him out of office, when in reality, really these need to be removed. All right. Last story of the day comes from the one, the only, the Daily Wire. So, New York just had primary elections yesterday for the incoming mayor. So, Eric Adams is wildly hated by the city, as has every New York Democrat mayor in the past, 10 years or so. It seems like they haven't had a good mayor since Rudy Giuliani, frankly. So they had their primaries yesterday, and far and away the winner was this guy named Zoran Mamdani. Is that how you pronounce his name? No one's ever heard of this guy before. He came out of nowhere, and that's who the people voted for. He's a socialist, by the way. So Andrew Cuomo was also running in this race. Andrew Cuomo, who, if you remember, killed all the old people during COVID just a few years ago in New York, and has had all of these allegations of sexual assaults and stuff on his record. He also won. He came in second place. So New York's not done with him, apparently. They liked him enough. Andrew Cuomo falls to radical socialist Zoran Mamdani in New York City mayoral primary. Andrew Cuomo's scandal-plagued political career came to an unceremonious end Tuesday when voters overwhelmingly ranked their former governor, he was a former governor, below a 33-year-old socialist who wants to abolish the police and establish city-run grocery stores. I love former governor turned mayor of New York. How often does that happen? What a downgrade. You go from running a garbage state to running a garbage city. Gosh. No shame to New York. There are some very beautiful parts of New York. Not all of New York is terrible, but a lot of it is. Zoran Mamdani, an assemblyman from Queens, emerged from the first round of New York City's Democratic mayoral primary around 44% of the vote. Cuomo, who resigned as governor in 2021 amid allegations that he sexually harassed female staffers, came in second, with around 36% of voters. He called to congratulate Mamdani on his victory late Tuesday night and did not say if he still plans to appear in the ballot for the Fight and Deliver party, which he formed for this race. Quote, "Tonight was not our night," Cuomo said. "Tonight was Assemblyman Mamdani's night." No kidding. That's for sure. Regardless of who ultimately wins the Democratic nomination, Cuomo, Mamdani, and Adams are set to be on the ballot in November's general election. They'll face off against Republican Curtis Silwa, a talk show host and independent Jim Wadden, a former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. While none of the Democratic mayoral candidates cross-endorsed Cuomo, the former mayor racked up endorsements from big Democrats like Bill Clinton and Michael Bloomberg. Mamdani has the backing of progressive stalwarts like Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and a slew of celebrities including Emily Radajowski and Cynthia Nixon, who called Cuomo, quote, Trump billionaire-funded sex predator. I don't know what Trump has to do with Cuomo being a billionaire-funded sex predator, but they just always drop his name anytime anything negative comes up. Matt Madani, who won a majority of early votes, leaned into his socialism through the campaign. He pledged to freeze rent, establish city-run grocery stores, and devote $65 million to transgender procedures for both kids and adults. Matt Madani has also promised to make school lunches, city buses, and childcare free, and to establish a, quote, Department of Community Safety to prevent violence before it happens, which critics say is simply an effort to defund police. The Department of Community Safety. Yes, it sounds like such a nice department. The Department of Community Safety. What are we going to do with the Department of Community Safety? I don't know how they plan on stopping crimes before they happen. One, that's kind of the job of the police, is having a high police presence around tends to deter criminals from doing illegal actions. My best guess is that the Department of Community Safety will be looking at social media posts and determine if someone's rights need to be infringed upon because they said negative things online. So we'll see how that goes. My God. If you live in New York and you haven't moved yet, please do. There's no reason to stay in New York. This guy will be the next governor unless somehow the only scenario, and how funny would it be? All right, so there's a Republican running. So Eric Adams, Chris Cuomo, and Zohran Mamdani, as well as the Republican, are all running on the ballot. How funny would it be if Democrats split their votes so stringently between Eric Adams, Chris Cuomo, and Zohran Mamdani that none of them came up with enough of a majority to overcome the Republicans who vote for what's his name, Chris Silva or whatever his name was, and somehow a Republican becomes the mayor of New York. How funny would that be? It just goes to show you how dumb ranked choice voting is, but it would be hilarious in this setting. So, I mean, if ranked choice voting works well enough that they elect a Republican into the mayoral office in New York, I will not bash ranked choice voting for quite a while. That's for sure. Because that would be so funny. Would make 2025 the absolute year of the memes. First we get Donald Trump back in office. Then we get a Republican running in New York City. Oh my gosh. It would be so funny. All right. Well, that's all that we have for today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Spin Cycle Live. I know that I did. We'll be back on Friday with the next episode of the show. And tweet at me online. Let me know how what you think of these stories. And gosh, what is New York going to do to clean up their act? I really have no idea. So we'll see how all that goes. Great news from NATO for kind of cleaning up their act a little bit and sending a little bit more money for defense spending through NATO. And great decisions by the Supreme Court to allow Trump to continue forward with mass deportations. And finally, we talked about Al Green, who, scum of the earth Al Green, can't get a job other than in Congress trying to impeach the president. Well, with that, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. I will see you on the next one. Peace out. Bye.